The marble floor was cold, unforgiving, just like the laughter that echoed through the glass-walled office. An old cleaner lay on the ground. Her faded wrapper soaked her hands, trembling as she tried to rise. High heels paused, then stepped around her. Perfume hung heavy in the air. No one bent down, no one cared. Someone scoffed, someone filmed, someone whispered she's too slow. Then a chair scraped back. A young woman pushed through the crowd, knelt without hesitation, and wrapped her arms around the old woman. "Are you okay, Mama?" she whispered. In that moment, a silent test began, one that would expose hearts, shatter lies, and change lives forever. If this story touches you, tell us where you're watching from and your local time. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories of justice, kindness, and hope, long before the whispers, before the fall on the cold marble floor. The old woman had lived a life wrapped in silk and power. Her name was Madame Nana Kofi, and for decades she had stood beside one of the most formidable businessmen in the city. Together they built an empire that fed thousands of families and shaped skylines. Boardrooms rose at her word. Politicians listened when she spoke. But when her husband died, the noise of power faded and silence moved into her mansion like an uninvited guest. There was only one voice that still mattered to her, her son's. Kwame Kofi was everything his father had hoped for. Disciplined, brilliant, grounded. He had left home as a boy and returned as a man sharpened by years abroad. Top schools, tough mentors, and a world that taught him how quickly money could blur truth. Now he was finally coming home to take his place at the head of the family company. And that was when fear settled into Madame Nana's heart. She had watched it happen too many times. Men with money surrounded by women who smiled for cameras, not for souls. Women who spoke the language of luxury but not of loyalty. Women who called love a transaction. Madame Nana did not blame them entirely. Poverty could teach hunger in dangerous ways. But she refused to let her son mistake admiration for affection. Who will stand by him when the lights go out? She asked herself at night. Who will love the man, not the empire? Advisors suggested background checks. Friends suggested elite gatherings. Some even suggested choosing for him. Madame Nana rejected them all. Wealth, she knew, could buy obedience, but never truth. So she made a decision that shocked even herself. If she wanted to know who truly had a good heart, she had to remove every symbol of power from her own life. No title, no influence, no protection. She would become invisible. At dawn, one quiet morning, Madame Nana folded away her fine clothes and jewelry. She wrapped herself in a faded cloth, tied a loose headscarf, and slipped into rubber slippers that slapped softly against the pavement. She looked at herself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. Older, smaller, ordinary. Perfect. The company's cleaning agency barely glanced at her application. An old woman willing to work for little pay was never questioned. By the end of the week, Madame Nana Kofi, widow of a titan, had become simply Mama Nana the cleaner. Her rules were simple and strict. She would not reveal herself. She would not complain. She would endure whatever came. She would watch how people treated her when they believed she was nothing. The first day nearly broke her. The moment she stepped into the building, conversation died. Then laughter rose in its place. Eyes swept over her from head to toe, measuring her worth in seconds. She felt the weight of every stare, every wrinkle of disgust. Once people had stood when she entered rooms, now they barely made space for her mop. At night, her body ached in ways it never had before. Her back burned, her hands cracked. Yet something else hurt more: the casual cruelty, the jokes, the way people spoke about her as if she were furniture. Still she stayed, because for every sneer there was a lesson, for every insult a truth revealed. She watched the women who wore ambition like perfume. She watched how they treated receptionists, security guards, interns. She listened to how they spoke about Kwame before they had even met him. And then one afternoon she noticed someone different. A young woman sat quietly at her desk, focused, calm. No loud laughter, no cruel jokes. When others mocked, she did not join. When others ignored, she simply kept working. And when Madame Nana stumbled for the first time, when her bucket tipped and water spread across the floor, it was this young woman who stood up. Not dramatically, not for praise, just instinctively. Madame Nana felt something shift in her chest. She did not yet know the girl's name. She did not yet know her story. But she knew this kindness shown to the powerless was the rarest currency of all. From that moment, the plan changed. This was no longer just about finding a wife for her son. It was about uncovering character in a world that rewarded performance. And Madame Nana was willing to be humiliated 1,000 times if it meant discovering the truth before it was too late. Long before anyone laughed at her faded wrapper or looked past her bent back, the woman the office now called Mama Nana had lived a very different life. Her real name was Madame Nana Kofi, a name once spoken with respect in boardrooms, whispered with caution in political corridors, and printed in newspapers beside headlines about growth, power, and influence. For over 30 years, Madame Nana had stood beside her husband as they built one of the most formidable companies in the city. She was not just a wealthy man's wife. She was his strategist, his quiet counselor, the woman who read people faster than numbers and understood that character, not capital, sustained an empire. Together they rose from modest beginnings to unimaginable wealth, never forgetting where they came from. But wealth, she had learned, was loud, and loss was quiet. When her husband died suddenly, the house that once echoed with meetings and celebrations fell into a heavy silence. Condolences poured in. Cameras flashed. Powerful men bowed their heads in public grief. Yet when the doors closed at night, it was just Madame Nana and the ache that money could not soothe. She had only one child, her son Kwame. Kwame had been her miracle baby, born after years of waiting and whispered prayers. She raised him with strict discipline and deep love, determined that privilege would never replace principle. She sent him abroad to study, not just to earn degrees, but to see the world beyond comfort. He learned responsibility early. He learned restraint. He learned that respect was not demanded, it was earned. Now, after more than a decade away, Kwame was finally coming home. He would take over his late father's company, assume the weight of thousands of livelihoods, and step into a role that came with both admiration and danger. That was when fear quietly entered Madame Nana's heart. She had watched too many powerful men fall, not because they lacked intelligence, but because they trusted the wrong people. She had seen marriages built on appearances crumble when money shifted. She had watched women smile sweetly at charity galas while counting bank balances in their minds. And she knew the truth. Few admitted out loud. Wealth attracted many, but sincerity attracted very few. At night, alone in her room, she asked herself questions that refused to let her sleep. Who would love my son when his name no longer opens doors? Who would stand beside him if the empire ever shook? Who would respect him not as a prize, but as a human being? Friends suggested solutions that sounded sensible but felt hollow. Some recommended background investigations. Others offered introductions to daughters of powerful families. A few even joked that with Kwame's status, love would sort itself out. Madame Nana rejected them all. She had spent her life reading people. She knew that when money entered the room, honesty often slipped out the back door. If she truly wanted to know who had a good heart, she needed to remove every sign of power from the equation. And so, an unthinkable idea formed in her mind. She would disappear, not physically but socially. She would strip herself of her title, her influence, her protection. She would step into the lowest role in the very company she owned, and watch how people behaved when they believed she was nothing. The decision did not come easily. It meant discomfort, humiliation, risk. At her age, even physical strain. But the thought of her son bound to a loveless marriage terrified her far more than aching bones or bruised pride. So she prepared. One early morning before sunrise painted the city gold. Madame Nana stood before her mirror and removed every trace of the woman she used to be. The jewelry went into a locked drawer. The elegant dresses were folded away. She wrapped herself in an old cloth faded by years of washing and tied a loose headscarf around her hair. She slipped her feet into rubber slippers that slapped softly against the floor. She barely recognized her reflection. The woman staring back looked smaller, older, ordinary, and that was exactly what she needed. Using a different name and a borrowed identity, she applied to the company's outsourced cleaning agency. No one questioned her background. No one asked for references. An elderly woman willing to work long hours for little pay was invisible in a city that moved too fast to notice such things. Within days, she was assigned to clean the very building her husband's portrait still hung in. Madame Nana made rules for herself. She wrote them down and read them every morning before work. She would not defend herself. She would not reveal the truth. She would not interfere no matter how painful it became. She would observe. The first day tested her resolve. The moment she entered the office with her mop and bucket, conversation paused. Eyes turned, then came the laughter, soft at first, then bolder. She felt the weight of judgment sweep over her like a cold wind. Once people had rushed to greet her. Now they barely made room for her to pass. Who let this old woman in? Someone whispered. She must be lost, another laughed. Madame Nana lowered her head and began to clean. Her back ached almost immediately. Her hands, unused to such labor, burned and trembled. But the physical pain was nothing compared to the casual cruelty. The way people spoke about her as if she could not hear. The way they treated her presence as an inconvenience. At night, she returned to her quiet house exhausted. She soaked her feet, massaged her back, and stared at the ceiling, fighting the urge to abandon the plan. More than once she asked herself if she had gone too far, but every insult revealed something valuable. She watched the ambitious women who wore confidence like armor. She listened to how they talked about money, power, and men. She observed how they treated security guards, interns, and receptionists. How respect vanished the moment status disappeared. And then one afternoon she noticed someone who did not fit. A young woman sat quietly at her desk, focused on her work. She did not join the laughter. She did not whisper insults. When others mocked, she remained silent, not out of fear, but out of choice. When Madame Nana struggled with her bucket for the first time and water spilled across the floor, this young woman stood up without hesitation. She did not look around for approval. She did not call attention to herself. She simply helped. Madame Nana felt something tighten in her chest. She did not yet know the girl's name. She did not know her background or her struggles. But she recognized the instinct immediately. It was the same instinct that had guided her own life, the reflex to see a human being before seeing a position. In that moment, Madame Nana understood something clearly. This was no longer just an experiment. This was a test of souls, and she was willing to endure every humiliation, every laugh, every fall, if it meant finding the one person whose kindness did not depend on who was watching. Because for Madame Nana, the future of her son and the legacy of everything she and her husband had built depended on one simple truth. How you treat those who can do nothing for you reveals who you truly are. By the end of her first week, Mama Nana understood the rhythm of the office better than any schedule pinned to the notice board. Mornings arrived wrapped in the sharp click of heels against polished tiles, the air thick with expensive perfume and ambition. Laughter came easily here, bright, rehearsed, and often unkind. Conversations floated above her head as if she were part of the furniture, something useful but unseen. She learned where the gossip gathered near the glass-walled conference room. She learned which corners stayed dirty the longest because no one bothered to walk there. And she learned the hierarchy quickly. Those at the top spoke loudly. Those below listened quietly. Those beneath that were expected not to exist at all. The women who dominated the office moved like a flock. They dressed alike, laughed alike, and spoke about the same things: luxury apartments, weekend getaways, and more recently, the impending return of the company's heir. They measured one another with sideways glances and smiles sharpened by competition. Their conversations were full of certainty, as if the future had already chosen favorites. "This company is about to change," one of them said one morning, adjusting her lipstick in a compact mirror. "And so are our lives," another replied with a knowing smile. Mama Nana kept her eyes on the floor, pushing her mop back and forth, listening. They spoke freely in her presence, convinced she was too old, too poor, too irrelevant to understand. They joked about her clothes, about her walk, about the way she bowed her head when spoken to. Each comment landed like a small stone, and she counted them carefully, not with anger, but with attention. Then there was Anita. Anita did not merely laugh. She performed. Her words were sharp, her confidence loud, her presence demanding. She made a sport of cruelty, delivering insults with a smile so practiced it almost passed for charm. When others hesitated, Anita stepped forward. When others whispered, she announced. "Old woman," she called out one afternoon, pointing at a faint streak of water. "You missed a spot." Mama Nana turned, nodded once, and returned to her work. "Is she deaf too?" Anita added, her friends snickering behind manicured hands. Mama Nana said nothing. Silence, she had learned, often revealed more than arguments ever could. But Anita was not satisfied. As Mama Nana bent to wring her mop, a sudden shove sent her stumbling. The bucket tipped, water splashed across the tile. Pain shot through her hip as she hit the floor, the shock stealing her breath. For a moment, the office froze. Then laughter erupted. "She's so slow. Why do they even hire people like her? Maybe she needs a walking stick." Mama Nana lay still, the cold seeping into her bones, the mop lying beside her like a discarded limb. She waited, not because she couldn't rise, but because she needed to see who would move first. No one did. Eyes flicked away. Phones came out. Heels stepped carefully around her body as if she were a spill rather than a person. Then a chair scraped back. Mama Nana heard footsteps, quick, unhesitating. A young woman knelt beside her, her brow furrowed with concern. "Are you okay, Mama?" the girl asked softly, reaching for her arm. The touch was gentle, human. Mama Nana looked up into eyes that held no disgust, no amusement, only worry. The girl helped her sit up, steadying her as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "Careful," the girl whispered. "You could get hurt." Anita rolled her eyes. "Why are you helping her? Let her deal with her own mess." The young woman ignored her. She picked up the fallen mop, squeezed the water back into the bucket, and handed it to Mama Nana with a small smile. The office grew quiet, not out of shame, but surprise. Mama Nana stood slowly, supported by the girl's arm. For a brief second, their eyes met, and something unspoken passed between them. Gratitude, recognition, resolve. The girl returned to her desk without ceremony, as if she hadn't just broken an invisible rule. Mama Nana watched her carefully from that moment on. She noticed how the girl arrived early and left late, how she brought simple food for lunch instead of ordering expensive takeout, how she greeted security guards by name and thanked the receptionist every morning. She noticed how the girl never joined the laughter when others mocked, never added her voice to cruelty, even when silence would have been safer. Her name, Mama Nana learned from overheard conversations, was Wendy. Wendy worked quietly, efficiently, without drama. She was not invisible, but she did not demand attention. And in an office built on performance that made her an outsider. Anita noticed too. "You think you're better than us?" Anita sneered one day as Wendy passed. "No," Wendy replied calmly. I just think everyone deserves respect." The words hung in the air heavy and unwelcome. That afternoon, Mama Nana's back ached more than usual. Each movement felt heavier, slower. As she wiped down desks, she felt eyes on her measuring, judging. The office had decided what she was an inconvenience, something to be tolerated, not acknowledged. And yet, amid the cruelty, Wendy remained constant. When Mama Nana dropped her cloth, Wendy picked it up. When someone complained about the smell of cleaning chemicals, Wendy opened a window. When laughter followed Mama Nana down the hallway, Wendy kept her head high as if refusing to participate in a game she had never agreed to play. Mama Nana began to understand the deeper pattern unfolding around her. It was not just about how people treated her. It was about how power reshaped behavior, how easily kindness disappeared when there was nothing to gain. That evening, as Mama Nana cleaned the break room alone, she paused by the window and looked out at the city below. Lights flickered on one by one, illuminating wealth and struggle in equal measure. Somewhere out there, her son was preparing to return, unaware of the test already underway. She thought of Wendy's hands, steady, warm, unafraid to touch what others avoided. And she thought of Anita's laughter, sharp, careless, loud. The choice, she realized, would not be subtle. People revealed themselves every day in small, ordinary moments, in how they spoke to cleaners, in how they responded to weakness, in whether they chose to step forward or step aside. As Mama Nana wrung out her mop one last time, she felt the familiar ache in her bones. But beneath it was something else now, a quiet certainty. The office believed it was watching a powerless old woman. In truth, she was watching them, and the test had only just begun. From that day onward, Mama Nana's eyes followed Wendy in quiet, careful ways. Not with suspicion, not with calculation, but with the patience of a woman who had learned that truth revealed itself slowly. Wendy did not change after the fall in the lobby. She did not boast. She did not seek approval. She returned to her desk, adjusted her chair, and went back to work as if helping a stranger off the floor was no more remarkable than breathing. But the office noticed. Whispers followed Wendy, now curling through corridors and hovering near her desk. Some were curious, others were sharp with judgment. In a place where kindness was often mistaken for weakness, Wendy had crossed an invisible line. Mama Nana observed how Wendy carried herself under that weight. Wendy was not wealthy. That much was clear in the details people usually overlooked. She wore the same 2 pairs of shoes on rotation, carefully polished. Her lunches were simple rice stew, sometimes bread and tea. When others complained about workload, Wendy stayed quiet, typing steadily, her brow creased with concentration. She arrived before most and left after many, often pausing to greet the cleaners on her way out. She lived carefully, intentionally. Mama Nana learned through fragments of conversation that Wendy supported her family, a younger sibling still in school, a mother whose health demanded money they did not have, rent that arrived every month without mercy. Wendy never spoke about these things loudly. She carried them the way strong people often do, silently tucked behind polite smiles. One afternoon, as Mama Nana wiped fingerprints from a glass door, she heard Anita's voice rise again. "Why do you keep calling her Mama?" Anita sneered. "She's not your mother." Wendy did not look up immediately. When she did, her expression was calm, steady. "She's someone's mother," Wendy replied. "That should be enough." The room fell quiet, not because anyone agreed, but because no one knew how to argue with that. Mama Nana felt something tighten in her chest. She remembered her own son as a child, the way he had once stood up for a classmate being mocked even when it meant punishment for himself. She remembered thinking then, "This is who he is." And now, watching Wendy, she felt the same recognition. That recognition was tested sooner than expected. The next morning, Mama Nana's back screamed in protest as she bent to scrub a stubborn stain near the hallway. Age had a way of announcing itself without apology. She paused, pressing a hand against her side, steadying her breath. Sweat trickled down her temple. Anita passed by, glanced at her, and smirked. "Don't slow down the whole office because of your bones," she said lightly. "Some of us have real work to do." Laughter followed her as she walked away. Mama Nana straightened slowly, the words settling heavy in her chest. Once people had waited for her to speak. Now they barely waited for her to move. Before she could resume cleaning, Wendy appeared at her side. "Mama, you should rest for a minute," Wendy said quietly. "I'll finish this spot." Mama Nana hesitated. Accepting help would make Wendy a bigger target. She knew that. And yet she also knew this was part of the test, not just of Wendy's kindness, but of her courage. "It's all right, my daughter," Mama Nana said softly. But Wendy had already taken the cloth from her hands. "I insist," she replied, not unkindly. "Please." Mama Nana stepped back, watching as Wendy knelt on the floor, scrubbing with the same focus she gave her work. People stared. Some shook their heads, others whispered, but Wendy did not look up. When she finished, she stood, wiped her hands, and smiled at Mama Nana. "There. Be careful, Mama." That night, Mama Nana lay awake long after the lights went out. Her body ached in places she had never felt before. But her mind was restless for a different reason. She thought of the risks Wendy took without calculating them. The way she helped without weighing consequences. The way she spoke truth calmly without fire or fear. Most people were kind when it was convenient. Wendy was kind when it cost her something. The following days only deepened that impression. In the break room, where conversations turned sharp and laughter often carried an edge, Wendy chose her seat carefully, always leaving space for Mama Nana. When others complained about the smell of cleaning supplies or local food, Wendy simply opened a window or changed the subject. When Mama Nana ate alone, Wendy joined her. When Mama Nana was mocked, Wendy stood near, not aggressively, not loudly, but visibly. It was a quiet form of resistance. Mama Nana noticed something else too. Wendy never pitied her. There was no exaggerated sympathy in her voice, no condescending tone. She did not speak to Mama Nana as if she were fragile or slow. She spoke to her as she would to anyone else, with respect. That distinction mattered more than Wendy could possibly know. One afternoon, as Mama Nana cleaned near Wendy's desk, she deliberately moved slower than usual, her movements careful, deliberate. She wanted to see what Wendy would do if helping meant falling behind on her own work. After a few minutes, Wendy glanced up from her computer. She noticed immediately. "Mama," she said gently, "would you like to sit for a bit? I can bring you some water." Mama Nana searched her face. "Won't you get in trouble?" Wendy shrugged lightly. "If kindness is trouble, then so be it." Mama Nana sat. As Wendy walked toward the kitchenette, Anita watched with narrowed eyes. There was irritation there, now sharp and personal. Wendy was no longer invisible, she was becoming a problem. "You think she's doing charity work?" Anita muttered to her friends, "acting holy to impress someone." Mama Nana heard every word. She also saw the shift taking place. Envy was replacing amusement, and envy, she knew, was far more dangerous. When Wendy returned with the water, she placed it carefully in Mama Nana's hands. Slowly, she said. Mama Nana drank, nodding her thanks. At that moment, something settled firmly in her heart. This girl was not kind because she expected a reward. She was kind because it was who she was when no one was watching, and even when they were. That evening, as Mama Nana walked home under the fading light, her steps slow and thoughtful, she reached a conclusion she had been resisting. The plan had worked perhaps too well. She had not only seen cruelty, she had seen goodness in its purest form, and she knew now that the road ahead would not be easy for Wendy. Kind people rarely traveled smooth paths in worlds built on competition. The more Wendy stood out, the more she would be tested. The more she chose dignity, the more others would try to break her. Mama Nana clenched her jaw, resolve hardening in her chest. If Wendy was going to walk through fire, she would not walk alone. The test would continue, but from this point on, Mama Nana was no longer just observing. She was protecting. Because the girl who still saw a human being where others saw a burden was no longer just part of an experiment. She was becoming family. The lunch bell rang softly through the office, a subtle signal that work would pause briefly for appetite and gossip. Chairs rolled back. Heels tapped toward the elevators. The break room filled quickly with laughter and the rustle of branded takeout bags. The scent of fried chicken, creamy pasta, and sweet pastries blended into a familiar perfume of convenience and excess. Mama Nana arrived last, as she always did. She carried a small, worn food flask tucked carefully under her arm. Inside was a meal she had prepared at dawn, her hands moving from memory rather than recipe. It was simple groundnut soup, rich and warm, paired with a small portion of fufu. The kind of food that nourished the body without apology. The kind of food that reminded you where you came from. She sat at the far end of the table alone. As she opened the flask, the aroma spread earthy, nutty, unmistakably traditional. Conversations faltered, noses wrinkled, eyes shifted toward her with open disdain. "What's that smell?" Linda asked, covering her nose with manicured fingers. Anita leaned back in her chair, lips curling into a smile that held no kindness. "It's the cleaner's food," she said loudly. "So local, so village." Laughter rippled through the room. Mama Nana kept eating. Each spoonful was deliberate. Calm. She did not flinch. She did not rush. She ate as someone who had learned long ago that dignity did not require permission. Wendy entered the break room moments later, her lunchbox in hand. She paused at the doorway, taking in the scene with quick, intelligent eyes. Mama Nana sitting alone. Anita and her circle whispering and laughing, the familiar pattern. Wendy hesitated only briefly. Then she walked straight to Mama Nana's table. "Good afternoon, Mama," Wendy said warmly. Mama Nana looked up, surprised and pleased. "Good afternoon, my daughter." Wendy sat down beside her and opened her lunchbox. Inside was jollof rice, modestly portioned without garnish or excess. She glanced at Mama Nana's food, curiosity lighting her eyes. "That smells good," Wendy said honestly. "Did you cook it yourself?" Mama Nana nodded. "Yes. Would you like to taste?" The room seemed to hold its breath. Anita scoffed loudly. "You're actually going to eat that?" she asked Wendy. "Food from a cleaner." Mama Nana paused mid-motion, the spoon hovering between them. She watched Wendy closely now. This was another test, one she had not planned but welcomed. Wendy could laugh it off. She could make an excuse. She could protect herself. Wendy smiled. "I'd love to," she said. Mama Nana served a small portion onto the spoon and handed it to her. Wendy took it without hesitation. She tasted it slowly, thoughtfully. Then her face softened. "This is amazing," Wendy said, genuine delight in her voice. "It tastes like home." The laughter died. Mama Nana felt something swell in her chest, tight and unfamiliar. She had expected kindness, yes, but not this ease. Not this absence of shame. Linda rolled her eyes. "You're going to get sick," Wendy shrugged. "I've eaten worse." Mama Nana laughed quietly into her bowl, the sound barely audible but deeply felt. They ate together in comfortable silence. Wendy asked about the recipe. Mama Nana explained where she learned it from her mother many years ago. Wendy listened with interest, not once glancing around to see who was watching. But someone always was. Across the room, Anita's smile hardened. This was no longer amusing. Wendy was not just being kind, she was being visible. And in a space where everyone competed for attention, Wendy was drawing it in the wrong way. After lunch, as people filtered back to their desks, Mama Nana lingered, packing away her flask. Wendy helped her stand. "Thank you for sharing," Wendy said softly. Mama Nana nodded. "Thank you for seeing." That afternoon, Mama Nana decided it was time to push the test further. She waited until the office grew quieter, the post-lunch lull settling in. Then she made her way toward the women's restroom, carrying her cleaning supplies. Her steps were slower now, her body tired. She entered the restroom and closed the door behind her. Inside, she took a deep breath. She tipped the bucket. Soapy water rushed across the tiled floor, spreading quickly. The sound echoed loud enough to draw attention. Mama Nana let the bucket fall with a clatter and cried out, clutching her waist. "My back," she groaned. "Please, someone help me." Footsteps approached. Voices followed. Anita entered first, eyes scanning the scene. Her expression twisted not with concern but amusement. "Oh no," she said mockingly. The poor old woman fell again. Linda snorted. "Maybe she should stop working. She's clearly too old." Mama Nana remained on the floor, her breathing labored, her voice weak. "Please," she whispered. "I can't move." Anita crossed her arms. "We're not cleaners," she said flatly. "It's not our job to clean up messes." Laughter followed. Then Wendy stepped inside. She froze for a split second, taking in the wet floor, Mama Nana on the ground, the cruel smiles. Something hardened in her expression, not anger, but resolve. Mama Wendy rushed forward, kneeling beside her. "Are you hurt?" Mama Nana groaned softly. "My waist, my daughter. I can't get up." Wendy looked up at the others. "Why are you just standing there?" she asked. "Help me," Anita scoffed. "Help a cleaner, please." Wendy turned back to Mama Nana. "Don't worry," she said gently. "I'm here." She pulled out her handkerchief and wiped the sweat from Mama Nana's forehead. Then, without another word, she rolled up her sleeves and began mopping the floor. The water sloshed as she worked fast and focused. The room went silent. No laughter. No whispers. Just the sound of a young woman cleaning a mess she did not create. When the floor was dry, Wendy helped Mama Nana to her feet, her arms steady and strong. "Let's get you somewhere to sit," she said. Mama Nana leaned on her heart, pounding not from pain but from emotion. The restroom moments ago filled with cruelty now held only stunned silence. As they stepped out, Anita watched them go, something dark flickering behind her eyes. That evening, Mama Nana returned home exhausted, her body aching deeply. She lowered herself onto her bed and closed her eyes. The test had gone further than she planned, but it had shown her everything she needed to see. Wendy's kindness was not performative. It was reflexive. She did not calculate the cost before acting. She did not pause to consider reputation or reward, and that made her dangerous. Not because she intended harm, but because her presence exposed others. Mama Nana stared at the ceiling, her decision now firm and unshakable. She had found what she was looking for, but she also knew this from this point forward Wendy would face storms she did not yet see. Envy had been awakened. Pride had been challenged. And people who felt exposed rarely stayed silent. The test was no longer about observation. It was about endurance. And Mama Nana would see it through no matter the cost. By the time the next morning arrived, the office had already chosen its version of yesterday's story. To some, Wendy was foolish, too soft, too eager to help, too unaware of how the world worked. To others, she was pretending, performing kindness like a costume, hoping someone important would notice. And to Anita and her circle, Wendy had crossed from nuisance to threat. Mama Nana felt the shift immediately. It lived in the looks now, longer, sharper. It moved through conversations that stopped the moment Wendy approached. It sat in the air like humidity before a storm. Kindness had exposed something ugly, and ugliness rarely forgave being seen. Mama Nana arrived early as usual, her joints stiff from the day before. The bathroom incident had taken more from her body than she had expected. Every step reminded her of her age. Still she worked. She always did. The office filled slowly. Wendy greeted the security guard, smiled at the receptionist, and settled at her desk. She did not look around for approval. She did not scan faces for danger. That Mama Nana knew was both her strength and her vulnerability. By mid-morning, Anita was already restless. She tapped her pen against her desk, eyes fixed on Wendy, irritation simmering beneath her polished calm. Wendy typed steadily, focused, unaware of the attention tightening around her. "Some people really like attention," Anita said loudly to no one in particular. Wendy didn't look up. Mama Nana continued cleaning nearby, pretending to scrub the same spot longer than necessary. She had learned that silence often made people louder. And Anita did not disappoint. "You know," Anita continued, turning in her chair, "there's a difference between being kind and being desperate." A few soft laughs followed. Wendy paused, fingers hovering over the keyboard. Slowly she turned. "I don't see the difference," she said evenly. "If someone needs help, you help them." Anita smiled thinly. "Spoken like someone who doesn't understand how things work here." Mama Nana held her breath. Wendy met Anita's gaze. "Maybe that's why I still sleep at night." The room stilled. Anita's smile vanished. From that moment, Mama Nana knew the storm had broken. The next test came sooner than expected and harsher. Later that afternoon, Mama Nana felt a familiar tightening in her lower back. She moved more slowly, carefully aware that every step was watched now. As she pushed her cart toward the restroom again, she sensed eyes following her. Inside, the tiles gleamed. Too clean, too quiet. Mama Nana stood still for a moment, steadying herself. She had not planned another test so soon, but life, she knew, often forced truth forward without permission. As she turned to leave, her foot slipped. This time it wasn't pretend. Pain shot through her side as she crashed onto the floor, breath knocked from her lungs. The world tilted, the ceiling blurred. She cried out. The door opened almost immediately. Anita stepped in, then stopped short, taking in the scene. Her eyes flickered, not with concern but calculation. "Well," she said lightly, "here we go again." Mama Nana struggled to sit up, her body trembling. "Please," she said, the word catching in her throat. "Help me." Anita didn't move. Instead, she leaned against the door frame, arms crossed. "You really should be more careful," she said. "You're becoming a liability." Her friends entered behind her, their expressions a mix of curiosity and amusement. "Is she acting again?" someone whispered. Mama Nana felt humiliation burn deeper than the pain. This time she couldn't rise on her own. The laughter started quietly, then grew. "She's slowing everyone down. Maybe it's time she retired." "This isn't our problem." Mama Nana closed her eyes briefly. Then she heard footsteps running. Mama Wendy burst into the restroom, breathless. She froze at the sight. Mama Nana on the floor, faces hovering above her, cruelty unhidden. "What happened?" Wendy asked, already kneeling. "I slipped," Mama Nana said softly, shame lacing her voice despite herself. "I can't stand." Wendy's jaw tightened. She looked up at the others. "Why hasn't anyone helped her?" Anita scoffed. "Because we're not nurses or cleaners." Wendy stood, her hands clenched at her sides. "You're human," she said. "That should be enough." Anita laughed sharply. "You really think you're special, don't you?" Wendy didn't answer. She turned back to Mama Nana. "Hold on to me," she said gently. Wendy slid one arm behind Mama Nana's back, bracing herself. Mama Nana gasped as pain flared, but Wendy adjusted, patient and careful. "I've got you," Wendy whispered. The others watched, stunned, as Wendy struggled to lift her. It wasn't easy. Mama Nana was heavier than she looked, and Wendy was slight. Her arms shook. Sweat beaded on her forehead. "Don't hurt yourself," someone muttered, half mocking, half wary. Wendy ignored them. She eased Mama Nana upright inch by inch, murmuring reassurance the entire time. When Mama Nana was finally seated against the wall, Wendy reached for her handkerchief and dabbed her brow. "Breathe slowly," Wendy said. "You're safe. Safe." The word landed hard in Mama Nana's chest. Then Wendy did something that made the room fall silent. She rolled up her sleeves, she picked up the fallen mop, and she began to clean. Water sloshed as she worked, fast and efficient, her movements practiced. She did not rush to finish so she could leave. She cleaned thoroughly, deliberately, as if to say, "This matters." Anita stared, disbelief etched across her face. "You're embarrassing yourself," she hissed. Wendy didn't look up. "I'm doing what needs to be done." When the floor was dry, Wendy returned to Mama Nana's side and helped her stand again, slower this time, careful not to cause more pain. "I'll walk you to a chair," Wendy said. "You shouldn't be alone right now." Mama Nana leaned heavily on her, overwhelmed. As they stepped out of the restroom, the office beyond seemed quieter, different. People pretended to work, eyes fixed on screens that no longer held their attention. The message had been delivered. That evening, Mama Nana returned home shaken. Her body ached fiercely now. She sank onto her bed, breathing deeply, waiting for the pain to ease. But the deeper ache was not physical. It was emotional. She had known kindness was rare. She had not realized how threatening it could be. She thought of Wendy's trembling arms, the determination in her eyes, the way she chose to kneel rather than look away. Wendy had not just helped her, she had challenged the entire room. And rooms like that did not forget challenges. Mama Nana stared at the ceiling, heart heavy with both pride and fear. Wendy had passed every test so far. But with each act of kindness, the cost was rising. The envy had sharpened into hostility, the laughter into intent. People who felt exposed would not stop. Mama Nana clenched her fists. She had entered this role to observe, to judge quietly, to choose carefully. But now the line had shifted. If Wendy was going to be targeted for doing the right thing, then Mama Nana would no longer remain a silent witness. She would still hide her name, her power, but she would not allow cruelty to go unchecked forever, because some tests revealed goodness, and others revealed danger, and Wendy, without knowing it, had stepped into both. The tension that settled over the office after the bathroom incident did not lift. If anything, it thickened. Kindness had crossed an invisible boundary, and the people who benefited from silence did not like boundaries being disturbed. Mama Nana felt it in the way conversations stopped when she passed. She felt it in the way Wendy's name was spoken now, not softly, not neutrally, but with edge. What had once been casual cruelty had become something more deliberate. Wendy, however, remained unchanged. She still arrived early, still greeted people with the same calm smile, still worked without complaint. But Mama Nana noticed the fatigue in her eyes now, the way her shoulders tightened when whispers followed her down the hall. Wendy felt the shift. She simply refused to let it change who she was. That afternoon, as Mama Nana wiped down the break room counters, she made a decision she had been holding back for days. Loneliness, she knew, was a quiet disease. It crept in unnoticed and hollowed people out from the inside. She had lived with it since her husband's death, eating alone, speaking to empty rooms, pretending strength was the same as peace. Wendy deserved better than isolation. "My daughter," Mama Nana said softly as Wendy passed by. "May I ask you something?" Wendy stopped immediately. "Of course, Mama." Mama Nana hesitated, not because she doubted Wendy, but because she knew this invitation would expose her further. Still, she continued. "I live alone," she said, "and eating alone every night, it is not good for the soul. Would you come and have dinner with me just once?" Wendy blinked, surprised. "You mean your house?" Mama Nana nodded. Before Wendy could answer, Anita's laugh sliced through the air. "Did you hear that?" she said loudly, swiveling in her chair. "Wendy is going to eat in a cleaner's house." Linda snorted. "She probably lives in one tiny face me, I face you room." Laughter followed sharper this time. Mama Nana remained silent, her eyes fixed on Wendy. This was another crossroad, one she would not influence. Wendy could decline politely. She could make an excuse. No one would blame her. Wendy turned to Anita, her expression calm but firm. "So what if she's a cleaner?" Wendy said. "She's still a human being." The room went quiet. Wendy turned back to Mama Nana and smiled. "I would be honored, Mama." Something inside Mama Nana tightened painfully, then softened. "Thank you, my daughter," she said quietly. The laughter resumed, but it sounded weaker now, unsure. That evening, Wendy stood outside Mama Nana's house, her small handbag clutched tightly in her hands. She had expected something different, something run down, maybe cramped and struggling. The jokes from the office echoed in her mind as she approached the gate. But what she saw made her pause. The house was modest, yes, but neat. The yard was swept clean. Potted plants lined the walkway. There was nothing luxurious about it, yet everything spoke of care, of order, of dignity. Mama Nana opened the door with a warm smile. "Welcome, my daughter." As Wendy stepped inside, the scent of food wrapped around her: jollof rice, fried plantain, grilled fish. It smelled like comfort, like effort. "You cooked all this?" Wendy asked. Mama Nana chuckled. "Of course. Sit." They ate together at a small table, the room softly lit. Conversation flowed easily about childhood memories, about work, about dreams that felt too big to speak loudly. Wendy talked about wanting stability, about supporting her family, about the quiet hope that her life could mean something more than survival. Mama Nana listened intently, asking questions gently, never prying. What Wendy did not ask was equally important. She did not ask about money. She did not question why a cleaner lived in such a well-kept home. She did not search for hidden meaning. She simply enjoyed the company. As the evening stretched on, Mama Nana watched Wendy carefully. There was no pretense in her laughter, no calculation in her words. She spoke with honesty, with restraint, with a humility that came not from insecurity but from self-awareness. By the time Wendy left that night, Mama Nana was certain of one thing. The girl she was watching had no idea how powerful she already was. The next morning, the office buzzed with renewed energy. Rumors moved faster than emails. Wendy's dinner invitation had become entertainment. Anita and her circle wasted no time turning it into spectacle. "So how was the cleaner's palace?" Anita asked loudly as Wendy walked in. "Did you eat with your hands?" Linda added. Wendy paused at her desk, took a breath, and turned to face them. "It was a lovely evening," she said simply. "She's a wonderful person." Anita's smile twisted. "You really enjoy embarrassing yourself, don't you?" Wendy's voice remained steady. "I don't feel embarrassed." Mama Nana, standing nearby, felt a familiar ache in her chest, not from pain this time, but from pride. Wendy was not defensive. She was not angry. She was anchored, and that unsettled people. As the day wore on, Mama Nana sensed something else growing beneath the mockery: jealousy. Wendy had become untouchable not because of power, but because of principle. And principles were hard to attack without exposing oneself. That evening, as Mama Nana prepared dinner again, she reflected on the path unfolding ahead. Inviting Wendy into her home had been more than an act of kindness. It had been a declaration. Wendy was no longer just someone she observed. Wendy was someone she cared for. And caring, Mama Nana knew, carried responsibility. She sat alone after dinner, hands folded, mind racing. Kwame would be arriving soon. The timing was no coincidence. Everything was aligning slowly, deliberately. But she also knew this: Wendy's presence was beginning to disrupt the balance of the office. The more she stood firm, the more others would try to pull her down. Mama Nana closed her eyes briefly. She had entered this place to find a wife for her son. She had not expected to find herself wanting to protect a daughter. The game had changed. What began as observation had become attachment. What began as testing had become commitment. And as Mama Nana lay down that night, the words echoed clearly in her heart. This girl will be tested again. The only question now was how far the cruelty would go and whether Wendy's strength rooted in kindness would be enough to withstand it. The second invitation came without ceremony. It was early evening when Wendy received Mama Nana's message, simple and warm. My daughter, if you are free, come by after work. I cooked too much again. Wendy smiled when she read it. For the first time in days, her chest felt lighter. The office, however, did not share her ease. By now, Wendy's association with the old cleaner had become a source of endless commentary. Whispers followed her steps. Laughter trailed behind her like a shadow. Some people no longer bothered to hide their disdain. Others watched her with a calculating curiosity, as if trying to decide whether kindness was a mask or a mistake. Wendy ignored them all. She left work quietly, walking past Mama Nana at the gate. The old woman nodded once their shared understanding silent and strong. They would meet later, away from eyes that judged too quickly. As Wendy approached Mama Nana's home that evening, she slowed her pace, taking in the surroundings more carefully than before. The neighborhood was calm, modest, far from the glittering estates of the wealthy. Children played in the distance. A radio hummed somewhere behind a closed door. Life here moved at a gentler rhythm. Mama Nana's house stood exactly as Wendy remembered it, simple, neat, and quietly dignified. Inside, the table was already set. Mama Nana moved around the kitchen with practiced ease, her posture straighter tonight, her movements calm and assured. Wendy noticed it immediately but said nothing. There was something different in the air, less like a visit, more like belonging. You didn't have to cook so much, Wendy said softly, placing her bag aside. Mama Nana smiled. When you have a guest, you cook with your heart. They sat together, steam rising from the plates between them. Wendy ate slowly, savoring the flavors, the warmth. She felt safe here more than she had felt in a long time. As they ate, Mama Nana began to ask gentle questions. Not about work gossip or office drama, but about Wendy herself. Where did you grow up? What did you dream of when you were younger? What keeps you going when things are hard? Wendy answered honestly. She spoke of a childhood shaped by responsibility, of dreams postponed but not abandoned. She talked about her family, about the weight she carried willingly, about the quiet fear of failure that followed her even in her sleep. Mama Nana listened without interruption, without judgment. What about you, Mama? Wendy asked at last. Did you ever imagine your life would be like this? Mama Nana paused. For a brief moment, the room seemed to hold its breath. Life rarely turns out how we imagine, she said slowly. But sometimes it turns out exactly how it should. Wendy nodded, sensing there was more beneath the words. After dinner, they moved to the sitting area, the evening settling around them. Mama Nana poured tea, her hands steady. Wendy noticed again that nothing in the house was extravagant, yet everything was intentional. Clean lines, carefully chosen furniture. No clutter, no waste. This was not the home of a woman who had given up. Mama Wendy said gently, "You carry yourself with so much strength. Even when people are cruel, you never let it break you." Mama Nana looked at her for a long moment. Strength, she said, is not the absence of pain. It is choosing not to let pain change who you are. The words stayed with Wendy. Outside, night fell quietly. Wendy prepared to leave, standing near the door, reluctant. She hadn't realized how much she needed this space, this calm, this reminder that kindness still existed beyond office walls. As Mama Nana walked her to the door, she placed a hand over Wendy's. "My daughter," she said softly, "whatever happens at that place, do not let anyone make you ashamed of your heart. Wendy swallowed. Sometimes I wonder if being kind is a weakness. Mama Nana's eyes hardened not with anger, but conviction. No, kindness is strength that has been tested. Wendy nodded, emotions rising unexpectedly. She left with a quiet smile, unaware that Mama Nana remained standing long after the door closed, her thoughts heavy and clear. That night, alone in her room, Mama Nana allowed herself a truth she had been resisting. She was no longer searching. The answer had been sitting at her table, sharing food, speaking honestly, expecting nothing. Wendy did not know who she truly was. She did not know the weight Mama Nana carried, the power hidden behind the old woman's silence. And that was exactly why she had been chosen. Mama Nana sat back down, hands folded in her lap. This is the one, she thought, not because Wendy was perfect, not because she was impressive, but because she was real in a world full of performance. Still, certainty did not bring peace. Mama Nana knew what lay ahead. She had seen envy turn vicious before. She had watched kind people be punished for refusing to play dirty. And she could already feel the tension tightening in the office like a coiled wire. Wendy's goodness had become visible, and visible goodness invited attack. The next morning confirmed her fears. Wendy arrived at work to find eyes already waiting for her. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Phones were quickly put away. The atmosphere was brittle. Anita sat at her desk, lips pressed into a thin line, fingers tapping impatiently. "Good morning," Wendy said politely. No one answered. Mama Nana watched from across the room, her heart heavy. Something was coming, and sure enough, as the day progressed, the whispers grew bolder. Wendy heard her name spoken behind her back more than once. She kept working, refusing to rise to it, but even she could feel it now, the shift from ridicule to intention. At lunchtime, Wendy sat alone. No one joined her. Mama Nana approached quietly and sat beside her. "Are you all right, my daughter?" she asked. Wendy forced a smile. "I am." Mama Nana studied her face. "You don't have to pretend with me." Wendy exhaled slowly. "I don't understand why being kind makes people angry." Mama Nana reached for her hand. "Because it reminds them of who they choose not to be." The words settled between them. That afternoon, as Mama Nana returned to her duties, her resolve hardened. The time for passive observation was ending. The girl she had chosen was entering dangerous territory where lies grew easily and cruelty found allies. And somewhere beyond the walls of the office, a plane was descending, carrying a man who would change everything. Kwame was coming home. Mama Nana looked out the window, her reflection faint against the glass. The test had revealed the truth she sought. But the truth she knew came with consequences. And soon those consequences would demand answers, not from Wendy, but from everyone who had mistaken power for worth and silence for innocence. The news broke before the official email arrived. "Kwame is coming today. I heard he landed this morning. They say he's taller than his photos." The office buzzed like a hive struck by sudden light. Chairs were adjusted, jackets straightened, lipstick reapplied with careful urgency. Laughter grew louder, brighter, too bright. Even the air felt different, charged with expectation. Mama Nana arrived early as always, her mop steady in her hands. She felt the change immediately. People moved with purpose now, glancing at doors, checking reflections in glass. The building was preparing for royalty. For years, Kwame Kofi had been a name spoken with admiration and curiosity. The only son, the heir, the man educated abroad, groomed to lead. To many in the office, he was not a person, but a possibility of promotion, of connection, of escape. Mama Nana cleaned quietly, her heart heavy with thoughts she could not share. Wendy arrived a few minutes later, greeting the security guard with her usual warmth. She sensed the tension too, but did not ask questions. She took her seat and began to work, focused as ever. "Can you believe it?" someone whispered behind her. This is our chance. Mama Nana watched Wendy from across the room. Wendy did not fix her hair. She did not glance at the mirror. She did not look up when footsteps hurried past her desk. Her attention remained on the screen in front of her. That Mama Nana thought was telling. The elevator chimed just after mid-morning. Conversation died instantly. Footsteps emerged, measured, confident. A tall man stepped into view dressed simply in a dark suit, his presence quiet but commanding. He moved with the ease of someone accustomed to being watched without needing to perform. Kwame Kofi had come home. People stood, smiles appeared. Greetings tumbled out in rehearsed enthusiasm. "Welcome back, sir. It's an honor to meet you." Kwame nodded politely, acknowledging the greetings without lingering. His eyes scanned the space not critically but observantly. He noticed the polished desks, the eager faces, the subtle tension that spoke of ambition held just below the surface. Then his gaze stopped. Near the center of the office, an old cleaner bent over her mop, working slowly, deliberately. Her hands were rough, her back slightly curved. She moved with quiet dignity, unaware or pretending to be of the spectacle unfolding around her. Something about the scene unsettled him. He stepped closer. "Excuse me," Mama Kwame said gently. "Why are you cleaning here alone?" Mama Nana looked up, surprise flickering briefly across her face before she masked it. "It is my work, sir." Kwame frowned slightly. "Where is the rest of the cleaning staff?" Before Mama Nana could respond, Anita swooped in, her smile radiant. "Oh, sir, don't worry about her," Anita said quickly. "She's just the cleaner. She's used to this." Kwame turned to her slowly. "Used to being treated without respect?" he asked calmly. Anita's smile faltered. "I didn't mean." Kwame's voice remained even, but there was steel beneath it. "No one should be used to disrespect." The office grew quiet again, this time uncomfortably so. From her desk, Wendy watched, heart pounding. She had not expected this. She had not expected him to notice Mama Nana at all. Kwame turned back to Mama Nana. "Are you all right?" he asked. Mama Nana nodded. "Yes, sir." Kwame studied her face, something familiar tugging at his memory, something he couldn't quite place. Then Wendy stood. "She deserves all the respect in the world," Wendy said clearly. Heads turned. Kwame looked toward the voice and saw her for the first time. She did not speak loudly. She did not posture. She simply stood there, eyes steady, unafraid. No heavy makeup, no exaggerated smile, just quiet conviction. Their eyes met, and something shifted. Kwame felt it like a pause in his breath, a tightening in his chest. It wasn't attraction, not yet. It was recognition, the sense that he was seeing something real in a room full of masks. "What's your name?" he asked. "Wendy," she replied. "I work in junior staff." Kwame nodded. "Thank you for speaking up." Wendy sat back down, her hands trembling slightly beneath the desk. She hadn't planned to say anything. It had simply felt wrong to stay silent. Mama Nana resumed cleaning, her heart racing. The moment she had prepared for and feared had arrived. Kwame was here, and he was already noticing the right things. As Kwame continued through the office, greeting department heads and exchanging polite words, whispers followed him like shadows. "Did you see how he looked at her? That girl has courage, or she's just foolish." Anita watched Wendy with narrowed eyes, resentment burning behind her calm exterior. This was not how things were supposed to go. Later that afternoon, Kwame retreated to his new office, the door closing softly behind him. He should have been reviewing reports, preparing for meetings, stepping into the role he had trained for. Instead, his mind returned again and again to the girl who had spoken up. He pressed the intercom. "Rose," he said to the receptionist, "could you send Wendy from junior staff to my office downstairs?" Wendy froze when she received the message. The office seemed to tilt around her. "What did you do?" someone whispered. "See, I told you," Anita muttered under her breath. Wendy stood slowly, her heart pounding. She hadn't sought attention. She hadn't planned this. But now there was no turning back. She knocked softly on the office door. "Come in." Kwame looked up as she entered, his expression unreadable. The room was spacious, elegant, filled with light. Wendy felt suddenly small. "Please sit," Kwame said. She did. "I hope I didn't make you uncomfortable earlier," he began. "I just don't like seeing people treated unfairly." Wendy swallowed. "Thank you, sir. That means a lot." Kwame leaned back slightly. "How long have you worked here? A few months?" "And the cleaner, the older woman?" "You seem close to her." Wendy's face softened. "Mama Nana. She's kind, strong. She reminds me that people are more than their titles." Kwame listened closely, something warming in his chest. As Wendy spoke, he noticed the way she chose her words, carefully, respectfully. She did not complain. She did not accuse. She spoke of dignity as if it were an everyday necessity. When she finished, Kwame smiled faintly. "Thank you for your honesty." As Wendy stood to leave, she hesitated. "Sir, yes, I didn't speak up today to impress anyone. I just couldn't stay quiet." Kwame nodded. "I believe you." When she left, Kwame sat alone, staring at the closed door. Across the office, Mama Nana watched from a distance, her heart full and conflicted. She had wanted Kwame to meet Wendy, but she had not expected it to happen like this. Not so quickly, not so openly. She knew now that Wendy had stepped onto a path that would change her life forever. And she also knew that not everyone would allow that path to remain clear. Anita's eyes followed Wendy as she returned to her desk, jealousy tightening her smile. The storm had arrived, and this time it was not made of rain, but of ambition, envy, and hearts that feared being exposed. From the moment Wendy returned to her desk, she felt it, the shift that followed her like a second shadow. The office no longer whispered about her out of idle curiosity. Now every glance carried calculation. Every smile felt measured. Even the air seemed to hold its breath. Kwame's office door had barely closed when the murmurs began. Why would he call her? She thinks she's special now. Let's see how long that confidence lasts. Wendy kept her eyes on her screen, fingers moving steadily over the keyboard. Her heart was still racing, but she refused to let it show. She had spoken up because it was right, not because she wanted to be seen. Still, she understood the rules of places like this. Visibility was dangerous. Across the room, Mama Nana watched quietly, mop resting against her shoulder. She had seen this pattern before, how attention turned into suspicion, how suspicion fermented into hostility. The girl she had chosen was stepping into a spotlight she never asked for. That afternoon, Wendy received another message from the receptionist. "The CEO would like to see you again." The words tightened her chest. Anita looked up instantly, eyes sharp. "Again," she muttered. "Interesting." Wendy stood slowly, smoothing her skirt. She took a deep breath and walked toward the elevator. Her steps measured, her expression calm. Inside, doubt gnawed at her. Had she said too much? Had she crossed a line? The elevator ride felt longer than it was. When the doors opened, the quiet elegance of the executive floor greeted her. Soft carpets, muted colors, a world far removed from the daily grind below. She knocked. "Come in." Kwame stood by the window when she entered, his back to her, the city spread beneath him like a living map. He turned as the door closed, studying her with a thoughtful expression. "Thank you for coming," he said. "Of course, sir. Please sit." Wendy obeyed, hands folded in her lap. Kwame returned to his desk but did not sit immediately. "I wanted to check on you," he said. "After this morning." Wendy blinked, surprised. "I'm all right." He tilted his head slightly. "Are you?" She hesitated, then nodded. "Yes." Kwame studied her face, the pause stretching between them. He had learned long ago that silence often revealed more than questions. "I don't tolerate bullying in this company," he said finally, "no matter who it comes from." Wendy's shoulders loosened slightly. "Thank you, sir. But I don't want trouble." Kwame's lips curved into a faint smile. "Sometimes trouble finds you anyway." The words landed gently but firmly. He sat down, then leaning forward. "Tell me about Mama Nana." Wendy's eyes warmed instantly. "She's strong. She works hard. She never complains even when people are unkind. She reminds me that dignity isn't about position." Kwame listened closely, something stirring in his chest. Wendy spoke of Mama Nana not as someone to be pitied, but as someone to be respected. That distinction mattered. "You call her Mama," Kwame observed. Wendy nodded. It felt natural. Kwame smiled softly. "It's been a long time since anyone spoke about a cleaner like that." Wendy met his gaze, her voice steady. "Because we don't look closely enough." For a moment, Kwame said nothing. He felt it again, that sense of recognition. This was not a woman trying to impress him. This was someone speaking from a place deeper than ambition. "Thank you," he said quietly. "You may go." Wendy stood unsure if the conversation was truly over. As she reached the door, Kwame spoke again. "Wendy." She turned. "Don't change," he said simply. She nodded and left. Back on the main floor, the reactions were immediate. Anita leaned toward Linda. "I told you, she's playing a long game." Wendy ignored them and returned to her desk, her face calm but her thoughts racing. She did not know it yet, but the ground beneath her feet had already begun to shift. Later that evening, Mama Nana sat across from Wendy at the small dining table, watching her carefully. "You were called to his office again," Mama Nana said gently. Wendy nodded. "He was kind. He said he doesn't tolerate bullying." Mama Nana stirred her tea slowly. "Kindness from power is good," she said, "but it also draws attention." Wendy frowned. "Mama, do you think I did something wrong?" Mama Nana reached across the table and covered Wendy's hand. "No, you did something right, and that is often harder to forgive." Wendy sighed. "Sometimes I wish I could just disappear at work, do my job quietly." Mama Nana's gaze sharpened. "You cannot disappear when your light shows, and you should not try." Wendy looked up, surprised by the firmness in her voice. "My daughter," Mama Nana continued, "people who benefit from silence will always fear those who speak with integrity. Be careful, but do not be afraid." That night, Wendy lay awake in her small room, replaying the day in her mind. Kwame's words echoed softly. "Don't change." She wondered what he truly saw in her and why it unsettled her. The next morning confirmed her unease. When Wendy arrived at the office, the atmosphere was colder. Smiles were tighter. Conversation stopped abruptly when she approached. Anita greeted her with exaggerated sweetness that made Wendy's skin prickle. "Morning superstar," Anita said. "Busy day with the boss?" Wendy didn't respond. As the hours passed, Wendy noticed subtle changes. Tasks reassigned without explanation. Emails unanswered. A meeting she had been scheduled for quietly removed from her calendar. It wasn't overt yet, but it was intentional. Mama Nana observed it all, her jaw tightening with each small injustice. She had seen this strategy before. Undermine quietly, isolate patiently, let pressure do the work. By midday, Wendy's phone buzzed. "Unknown number. Meet me at the Grand Royal Hotel tonight at 7 p.m. alone. I have something important to tell you." Wendy stared at the screen, unease creeping into her chest. She showed the message to Mama Nana that evening. Mama Nana's face darkened slightly as she read it. "Be careful, my daughter," she said. "Not everything that glitters is gold." Wendy nodded. "I know, but I need to understand what's happening." Mama Nana wanted to stop her. Every instinct screamed danger, but she also knew that Wendy's strength lay in facing things directly. Go, Mama Nana said at last, but keep your heart guarded. As Wendy prepared for bed, Mama Nana sat alone in her room, hands clenched tightly in her lap. The plan had gone further than she intended. Kwame's arrival had accelerated everything. Wendy was being pulled into a game she did not know existed, and somewhere in the city, jealousy was hardening into resolve. Mama Nana closed her eyes. The test was no longer just about choosing a bride. It was about survival. And the next move, she sensed, would not be kind. The Grand Royal Hotel rose above the city like a promise glass. Walls gold-lit entrances and security guards who looked at ordinary people as if they were accidents. Wendy stood outside for a moment, staring up at the building as cars rolled in and out, their engines purring like content animals. She checked her phone again. 7:00 p.m. alone, her stomach tightened. She could have ignored the message. She could have gone straight home, eaten quietly, and tried to forget this strange new attention. But something inside her refused to hide. In her life, fear had always demanded space, fear of debt, fear of failure, fear of hunger. If she kept running from every shadow, she would never breathe, so she stepped inside. The lobby smelled of polished wood and expensive flowers. Soft music played somewhere above, designed to calm people who never worried about rent. Wendy walked past the reception desk, her shoes clicking timidly against the marble. She scanned the room. A table in the far corner caught her eye, someone sitting alone, back straight, posture confident. As Wendy approached, her heartbeat jumped. Anita? Of course. Anita looked up and smiled like a queen welcoming a subject. Wendy, she said smoothly, gesturing to the chair opposite her. You came. Wendy did not sit immediately. You sent the message. Anita's smile widened. Sit. Let's talk like grown women. Wendy sat, but her posture remained tense. Why did you bring me here? Anita leaned forward slightly, lowering her voice as if they were friends sharing secrets. Because I'm doing you a favor. Wendy's eyes narrowed. A favor, Anita nodded. You don't understand the world you've stepped into. You think this is just an office. It's not. This company is power, and power has rules. Wendy's jaw tightened. I'm not playing any game. Anita laughed softly. That's what you think, but you're already in it. Wendy exhaled slowly, keeping her voice controlled. Tell me what you want. Anita's eyes sharpened. Stay away from Kwame. Wendy blinked, stunned. Excuse me, don't act innocent, Anita snapped, then recovered her calm quickly. You know he noticed you. He called you twice. Twice, Wendy. That doesn't happen for no reason. Wendy shook her head. He asked me about Mama Nana, that's all. Anita scoffed. You really think it ends there? Wendy's voice rose despite her effort to stay calm. Anita, I'm not chasing him. I'm just doing my job. Anita leaned back, studying Wendy like she was evaluating a product. Then she reached into her handbag and pulled out a thick brown envelope. She placed it on the table with deliberate precision, as if laying down a final argument. Wendy stared at it. Anita slid it toward her. Take it. Wendy didn't touch it. What is that money? Anita said simply. A lot of money. Wendy's throat went dry. Anita's voice softened into something almost seductive. Listen, Wendy. I'm not your enemy. I'm helping you avoid heartbreak. You're poor, don't deny it. Life has been beating you since you were a child. This money can change everything. Wendy's hands tightened under the table. Anita continued, her eyes gleaming. Quit the company, leave quietly, start over somewhere else. Forget you ever met Kwame. Wendy's heart pounded like a drum. She wanted to stand and leave, but her eyes remained fixed on the envelope as if it held a force of its own. Rent, her mother's hospital bills, her younger siblings' school fees, the unpaid electricity, the fear of waking up to an empty cupboard. Money like this could erase years of suffering in one night. Wendy's breath shook. Anita saw the hesitation and smiled with satisfaction. "That's it," she whispered. "You're smart. You understand." Wendy swallowed hard. Her mind battled itself. She imagined her mother's face when the bills were finally paid. She imagined her sibling walking into school without shame. She imagined herself sleeping without counting coins in the dark. Then another image rose, Mama Nana on the bathroom floor surrounded by laughter and Wendy's own hands kneeling to clean because no one else would. Wendy looked up. Anita's expression was expectant, confident. Wendy reached for the envelope. Anita's smile widened. But Wendy didn't pull it toward herself. She pushed it back. "No," Wendy said quietly. The word landed like a slap. Anita's smile froze. "What did you say?" Wendy's voice steadied, gaining strength. "I said no. I'm not leaving my job because you're jealous, and I'm not taking money to betray myself." Anita's eyes darkened. "Do you know what you're doing?" Wendy stood. "Yes. I'm choosing my dignity." Anita's voice sharpened. "Dignity won't pay your bills." Wendy paused for a moment, the truth of that sentence stabbing her. Then she turned fully toward Anita. "Maybe," Wendy said, "but dignity is the only thing I have that money can't buy." She walked away. Her legs trembled as she moved through the lobby, but she did not look back. Outside, the night air hit her face, cool and real. She sucked in a breath like she had been drowning. Her phone buzzed as she walked. "Unknown number. You just made the biggest mistake of your life." Wendy's stomach twisted. She stopped under a streetlight, staring at the screen as fear crawled up her spine. She wanted to tell herself it was just intimidation, empty threats. But deep down, she knew better. Back at home, Wendy sat on her bed, still in her work clothes, staring at the wall. Her hands shook slightly. She whispered a prayer under her breath, not for wealth, not for revenge, but for strength. Across the city, in the same hotel, Anita sat frozen at her table, her nails digging into her palm. Linda leaned toward her, uneasy. "Anita," Linda said slowly. "Maybe we should leave her alone." Anita's eyes flashed. "She refused me," she hissed. "She refused me." Linda swallowed, but framing someone, Anita slammed her hand on the table. She should have taken the money. And in the far corner of the restaurant, half hidden behind dark glasses and a scarf, Mama Nana sat silently, her tea untouched. She had followed Wendy, not because she doubted her, but because she needed to witness the truth with her own eyes. She watched Wendy push the envelope back. She watched her stand up and walk away. Mama Nana's chest tightened with something that felt like both pride and sorrow. Pride because Wendy had done the right thing even when it hurt. Sorrow because now Mama Nana knew the storm would truly begin. As she left the hotel quietly, Mama Nana's mind raced. She had hoped the office cruelty would remain petty insults, laughter, humiliation. But Anita had crossed into something darker, manipulation, threats, money used as a weapon. Mama Nana stopped near her car, looking up at the city lights. Kwame was at home, likely unaware of what had just happened. Wendy had passed the test, but passing a test did not guarantee safety. Mama Nana's jaw tightened. If Anita was willing to bribe Wendy, she would be willing to do worse when bribery failed. And Wendy, still thinking this was just office jealousy, had no idea how far some people would go to win. Wendy barely slept that night. Every time she closed her eyes, the brown envelope reappeared, thick, heavy, tempting. Then Anita's voice followed, sharp and cold, cutting through the quiet. "You just made the biggest mistake of your life." Wendy lay still in the dark, listening to the distant sounds of the city, her heart racing with questions she had no answers for. By morning, she had made a decision. Whatever came next, she would face it standing. She arrived at the office early as usual. The building felt different today, too quiet, like a room holding its breath. Even the security guard avoided her eyes. Wendy felt a chill creep up her spine but forced herself to walk steadily to her desk. Mama Nana arrived shortly after, her face calm but watchful. Their eyes met briefly across the room. Wendy managed a small smile. Mama Nana returned it, though unease tugged at her chest. Something was wrong. The office filled quickly. People whispered in tight clusters, phones clutched close to their chests. A few glances were thrown Wendy's way, some curious, some gleeful. No one spoke to her directly. Then Anita stood up. "Everyone please listen," she announced, her voice sweet and bright, cutting through the hum of keyboards. "This won't take long." Wendy's stomach dropped. Anita held up her phone. "I think we all deserve to hear this." Before Wendy could react, Anita pressed play. Wendy's own voice filled the room. "Kwame is already noticing you. It's only a matter of time." A ripple of laughter spread, then more audio played, carefully edited, twisted. Words pulled out of context, pauses removed. It sounded like Wendy was boasting, scheming, plotting her rise through innocence and charm. Wendy froze. "That's not," she started, but her voice was swallowed by the noise. "So the innocent act was fake all along," someone laughed. "She's just like the rest of us," another sneered. "Just better at pretending." Wendy's face burned. Her heart pounded so loudly she was sure others could hear it. She looked around the room, searching for one familiar face willing to meet her eyes. Most looked away. Anita stepped closer, lowering her voice so only Wendy could hear. "I warned you," she whispered. "You should have taken the money." Wendy clenched her fists, fighting the tears rising dangerously fast. She wanted to scream, to explain, to demand the full recording be played. But she knew how this worked. Once a lie was loud enough, truth struggled to breathe. She stood there silent, and that silence was interpreted as guilt. Kwame emerged from a meeting just then, drawn by the commotion. He stepped into the open office space, confusion crossing his face. "What's going on?" he asked. The laughter died instantly. Anita turned all innocence. "Oh, sir, nothing serious," she said lightly. "We were just sharing something funny." Kwame's eyes moved to Wendy. She stood rigid, her face pale, her eyes glassy. Something about her posture, defensive but dignified, made his chest tighten. "Anita," Kwame said, his voice calm but firm, "step into my office." Anita laughed nervously. "Sir, it was just a joke," I said now. The room went silent. Anita's smile faltered, but she obeyed, heels clicking sharply as she followed him. The door closed behind them. Kwame turned back to Wendy. "Are you okay?" Wendy swallowed hard and nodded. "Yes, sir," but her voice betrayed her. Mama Nana, standing nearby, felt fury rise in her chest like fire. She had seen cruelty before, but this was calculated, public, designed to humiliate. That evening, Wendy did not go straight home. She walked the long way, letting the city noise drown her thoughts. Her phone buzzed repeatedly, messages from unknown numbers, from co-workers she barely knew, from people she thought were friends. "So it's true, wow, I didn't expect that from you. Be careful how you climb." She turned the phone off. At Mama Nana's house later that night, Wendy finally broke. She sat at the table, shoulders shaking, tears streaming down her face. "Mama," she whispered, "I didn't do anything wrong." Mama Nana crossed the room and pulled Wendy into her arms, holding her tightly. "I know," she said softly. "I know." Wendy sobbed, the weight of humiliation crashing down all at once. "Why are they doing this to me? I never wanted attention. I never wanted trouble." Mama Nana stroked her hair, her own eyes wet. "Because you refused to bow, because you showed them a mirror they didn't want to see." Wendy pulled back slightly, wiping her face. "What if this ruins everything? My job, my name?" Mama Nana looked at her steadily. "Names can be restored. Integrity cannot. Wendy nodded weakly. That same night, Anita tossed and turned in her bed, sleep refusing to come. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Mama Nana's face, not bent and silent, but watching. Judging. At exactly 3 a.m., her phone buzzed. Unknown number. You have touched the wrong person. Anita sat upright, heart racing. Who is this? She typed, her fingers shaking. No reply came. The room felt suddenly too quiet, too empty. Anita glanced around, her breath shallow, a chill crawling along her skin. She told herself it was nothing, just Wendy trying to scare her. But deep down, fear had planted its seed. The next morning, Wendy arrived at work with her head held high, though her chest felt hollow. She avoided eye contact, focused on her tasks. Whispers followed her relentlessly. Then just before noon, her phone rang. An unfamiliar number. She hesitated, then answered. Is this Wendy Mina? A stern voice asked. Yes, this is the police. We need you to come down to the station for questioning. Wendy's heart stopped. For what? She whispered. Fraud and theft, the voice replied. The call ended. Wendy stared at the phone, her world tilting. Her hands trembled violently now. This wasn't gossip. This wasn't humiliation. This was something else. Across the office, Mama Nana watched Wendy's face drain of color. Wendy stood slowly, her legs unsteady. Mama Wendy whispered as she passed, her voice barely audible, something bad is happening. Mama Nana's chest tightened painfully. She had hoped it wouldn't come to this. She had prayed the cruelty would stop at words. But envy, once awakened, rarely did. As Wendy walked toward the exit, eyes followed her, not with laughter now, but with fascination. The lie had grown teeth. Mama Nana stood frozen for a moment, then reached for her bag. The time for watching was ending. The time for truth was approaching, and the cost of kindness was about to be paid in full. The knock came before sunrise. It was sharp, insistent, slicing through the thin walls of Wendy's room like a blade. She sat up in bed, instantly heart racing, the echo of yesterday's phone call crashing back into her mind. For a moment she hoped foolishly that it was a mistake. A wrong door, a wrong name. The knock came again. Police. Her breath caught. Wendy's hands shook as she pulled on a sweater and crossed the room. When she opened the door, 2 uniformed officers stood there, faces unreadable. Neighbors' doors cracked open one by one, curiosity peeking through narrow gaps. Are you Wendy Mina? One officer asked. Yes, she whispered. You are under arrest for theft and fraud. The words hit her like a physical blow. What? Wendy gasped. There must be a mistake. I didn't. Before she could finish, cold metal closed around her wrists. The sound of the handcuffs clicking shut echoed louder than any accusation. Wendy's knees weakened. I didn't steal anything, she said, her voice breaking. I swear. The officers did not respond. As they led her down the narrow corridor, whispers followed her like smoke. Did you hear? I always knew something was off. So that recording was true. Wendy lowered her head, shame burning her cheeks. Not because she was guilty, but because she was being displayed like proof. Outside, the early morning air was cruelly calm. Birds chirped. A bus rumbled past. Life continued, indifferent to the way her world was collapsing. At the station, the walls felt colder, harder. Wendy was led into a small holding cell, the door slamming shut behind her with finality. The echo rang in her ears long after the sound faded. She sank onto the bench, her breath coming in shallow bursts. How had this happened so fast? The officer's words replayed in her mind, fraud and theft. She had never stolen so much as a pen that didn't belong to her. She thought of her mother, of her sibling, of the job she had worked so hard to keep. All of it felt like it was slipping through her fingers. Tears welled up despite her effort to stay strong. Minutes blurred into an hour, or maybe longer. Time lost its shape in the cell. Then footsteps approached. "The bail has been posted," a guard said, glancing at her through the bars. "You're free to go for now." Wendy's head snapped up. "Who?" she asked. "Who posted my bail?" The guard shrugged. "She's waiting outside." Confused and trembling, Wendy followed him through the hallway. As they reached the waiting area, her breath caught painfully in her throat. Mama Nana stood there, not bent over a mop, not hidden in faded clothes. She stood upright, her posture steady, her eyes filled with a sadness that cut deeper than anger ever could. "Mama," Wendy whispered. Mama Nana crossed the space between them in 2 strides and pulled Wendy into her arms. Wendy collapsed against her sobs, tearing free at last. "I didn't do it," Wendy cried. "I didn't steal anything. I know my daughter," Mama Nana said softly, wiping Wendy's tears with trembling fingers. "I know." Wendy clung to her as if she were the only solid thing left in the world. The station faded around them. The stairs, the murmurs, none of it mattered. Mama Nana held Wendy until her shaking slowed. Outside, Mama Nana guided Wendy into the car. Wendy sat silently, staring at her cuffed wrists, now free but still marked by fear. At Mama Nana's house, Wendy sat on the couch, wrapped in a blanket she didn't remember being given. The room felt smaller today, as if the walls themselves were listening. "They said money was found in my account," Wendy said quietly, staring at the floor. "Large deposits, money I've never seen." Mama Nana closed her eyes briefly. Wendy looked up. "Mama, why would anyone do this to me?" Mama Nana opened her eyes, the answer heavy on her tongue. She wanted to tell Wendy everything, to explain who she was, to explain the power behind the cruelty, to promise that this nightmare would end quickly. But the time was not yet right. "Because you threatened someone's pride," Mama Nana said instead. "And pride is dangerous when it feels exposed." Wendy swallowed. "What if they take everything from me? My job, my name?" Mama Nana leaned forward, her voice steady. "Then we fight for the truth." That same morning across town, Kwame sat in his office, scrolling through his phone, when a headline made his chest seize. "Junior staff arrested for company fraud." His fingers froze. He clicked the article. There was Wendy's name, her photo, a blurred image of her being escorted into a police vehicle. His breath caught painfully. "No," he whispered. This didn't make sense. Not with the Wendy he had met. Not with the woman who spoke about dignity instead of ambition. Not with the one who knelt to help a cleaner when no one was watching. He stood abruptly, grabbing his jacket. "Rose," he said sharply into the intercom, "cancel my meetings." Across the city, in a luxurious hotel room, Anita lounged on the bed, champagne glass in hand. Linda sat nearby, scrolling nervously through her phone. "She's finished," Anita said coolly. "By the end of the week, no one will even remember her name." Linda hesitated. "Anita, are you sure about this? Framing someone this is serious?" Anita's eyes flashed. "I warned her. She chose this." Linda swallowed hard, unease settling in her stomach. Back at Mama Nana's house, Wendy stared out the window, exhaustion pulling at her bones. "Kwame will hate me," she whispered suddenly. "He'll think I lied." Mama Nana placed a hand over Wendy's. "Truth has a way of finding its voice," she said gently, "even when lies shout." But inside, Mama Nana's heart raged. She had watched quietly. She had endured humiliation. She had tested hearts. And now the line had been crossed. This was no longer office cruelty. This was war. As night fell, Wendy lay awake on the couch, fear and doubt circling her thoughts. Mama Nana sat nearby, hands clasped tightly in her lap, her mind racing with calculations she had hoped never to make. She had hidden her identity to observe character. But character had been revealed beautifully in Wendy, viciously in others. And now the truth would demand a price. The question was no longer if the truth would come out. It was how much damage would be done before it did. Mama Nana rose quietly and walked to the window, gazing out at the city lights. Her son was already moving. She could feel it. And when Kwame uncovered the truth, as he surely would, the masks would fall. Every single one of them. Kwame did not slow down as he left the building. The moment he stepped into his car, the city blurred past him, lights streaking as his thoughts raced ahead of traffic. Wendy's face, calm, honest, unguarded, refused to leave his mind. The headline he had read replayed itself again and again, each word striking harder than the last. Fraud, theft, arrested, none of it fit. By the time he reached home, his decision was already made. He would not rely on gossip-edited recordings or whispers from people who thrived on spectacle. He would find the truth himself. The next morning, Kwame arrived at the office before most of the staff. The building felt different without the noise, empty, almost honest. He walked straight to the security office. "I need the CCTV footage from last week," he said calmly. Specifically, the days around the alleged transactions linked to Wendy Mina. The head of security hesitated. "Sir, there's a problem." Kwame's eyes sharpened. "What problem?" The man cleared his throat. "The footage from that week, it's missing." Kwame felt a chill crawl up his spine. "Missing how? Deleted," the man replied quietly. "All cameras covering Wendy's section. Someone wiped the files completely." For a moment, Kwame said nothing. Then he laughed, a short, humorless sound. "Do you know how many layers of authorization it takes to erase footage from this system?" he asked. The security head swallowed. "Yes, sir." "Then this wasn't an accident," Kwame said flatly. He walked out without another word. Back in his office, Kwame locked the door and sat down heavily. The pieces began to arrange themselves with cruel clarity. The edited audio, the sudden money deposits, the erased footage. None of it was random. Wendy had been framed. His chest tightened with guilt. He had looked into her eyes and questioned her honesty. He had walked away promising to investigate while she was being dragged into a nightmare. Kwame pressed his palms against his face, breathing slowly. "I should have protected her sooner." He straightened and reached for the intercom. "Rose," he said, voice steady again. "I need a list of everyone with access to the CCTV system." "Yes, sir." "And call the head of IT, now." Within an hour, Kwame was seated across from the IT director, files spread across the desk. The deletion was clean, the director explained. Whoever did it knew exactly what they were doing. This wasn't a hack. It was an inside job. Kwame tapped the desk thoughtfully. "Who had motive?" The director hesitated. "Sir, access like this is usually limited to senior staff." Kwame nodded. "And financial records." The director slid another file forward. The money deposited into Wendy's account came from multiple shell transfers. Small amounts at first, then larger. Designed to look like ongoing theft. Kwame scanned the documents, his jaw tightening. "Can you trace the origin?" "Not directly," the director admitted. "But the pattern matches previous internal fraud cases." Kwame leaned back, eyes narrowing. "Show me those cases." As names and reports flashed before him, one pattern stood out, an overlap of departments, permissions, and influence, and one name appeared more often than coincidence allowed. Anita. Kwame closed the file slowly. At the same time, across the city, Anita sat in her apartment, staring at her phone. She had not slept well. Every sound startled her. Every notification made her flinch. The message from the unknown number still haunted her. "You have touched the wrong person." She tried to convince herself it was meaningless. Wendy had no power, no money, no allies. This would blow over. And yet, Anita glanced at her laptop where news articles still lingered on the screen. Wendy's name was trending, debated, dissected, judged. Some believed the story, others questioned it. Anita's confidence wavered. Back at Mama Nana's house, Wendy sat quietly at the table, staring into a cup of tea gone cold. Mama Nana moved around the kitchen, her presence steady but heavy with restraint. "Kwame will find the truth," Mama Nana said gently. Wendy nodded, though doubt clouded her eyes. "What if he doesn't?" she whispered. "What if this is all anyone remembers of me?" Mama Nana stopped and turned to her. "Then I will speak." Wendy looked up confused. "Speak," Mama Nana smiled faintly. "There are moments when silence is wisdom, and moments when silence becomes injustice." She did not explain further. That afternoon, Kwame requested a private meeting with the board's legal counsel. Doors closed, voices lowered, files were opened. "I want a full internal investigation," Kwame said firmly. "Discreet, no leaks." One of the lawyers hesitated. "Sir, if this implicates senior staff, then so be it," Kwame interrupted. This company was not built on protecting liars. By evening, the evidence was mounting. Emails recovered from backups. Access logs quietly restored. Financial trails beginning to point somewhere very specific. Kwame stared at the final report long after the room had emptied. There it was. The truth. Not just Wendy's innocence, but the deliberate effort to destroy her. Kwame stood and walked to the window, the city glowing below him. His reflection stared back, older, somehow heavier with responsibility. He thought of Wendy sitting in a cold cell, of Mama Nana wiping her tears, of the way the office had laughed while truth was strangled. He picked up his phone. "Mama," he said when she answered. There was a pause on the line. "Yes, my son." "I know," Kwame said quietly. "Everything." Mama Nana closed her eyes. "Then it is time," she replied. The next morning, an email circulated through the company marked mandatory attendance. A full staff meeting. No explanation. Speculation exploded instantly. Anita read the email 3 times, her stomach twisting. She tried to call Linda. No answer. By the time the meeting began, the room was packed. Faces were tense. Whispers darted like nervous birds. Kwame stood at the front, his expression unreadable. Beside him stood Mama Nana, not in her faded wrapper, not with a mop. She wore a tailored dress, elegant and unmistakably powerful. The room froze. Anita's breath left her lungs. Kwame's voice cut through the silence. "Before we begin," he said, "I need everyone to understand something." He turned toward the woman beside him. "This," he said clearly, "is my mother." The shock rippled through the room like an earthquake. Mama Nana stepped forward, her gaze steady, her voice calm but commanding. "For weeks," she said, "you saw me as nothing, and in that time you showed me everything." Anita's legs trembled. Kwame continued, his voice firm. "We will address the truth today, fully, publicly." He glanced at the screen behind him where files began to appear, timestamps, logs, transfers, names. The truth was no longer hiding, and the room knew it. This was not a meeting. It was a reckoning. The conference hall felt too small for the silence inside it. Every chair was filled, every aisle crowded. People who normally strutted through the office with confidence now sat stiff-backed hands, folded eyes darting. The air smelled faintly of perfume and fear. At the front of the room, Kwame stood like a judge who had already read the verdict. Beside him was the woman everyone had mocked, now dressed in quiet elegance, her head held high, her presence heavy with authority. Mama Nana, not the cleaner, the owner's wife, the CEO's mother. Anita's throat tightened until swallowing hurt. Linda's face had turned pale. Around them, whispers trembled and died before fully forming because no one wanted to be caught speaking in the wrong moment. Kwame raised his hand slightly. The room went still. For weeks he began, voice calm and controlled. "I have watched how this company treats people. Not just clients, not just partners, but each other. His gaze swept over the crowd, slow, deliberate. Yesterday, I found out that an innocent staff member was arrested for fraud. A staff member whose reputation was destroyed in front of all of you. And this morning, I confirmed something that changes everything. He nodded toward the screen behind him. A file appeared. Then another. Logs, dates, access records, transfer histories. A timeline built like a blade. A quiet murmur rose, then fell again as people leaned forward, reading what they could from a distance. Kwame continued. The CCTV footage from last week was deleted. Not corrupted, not misplaced. Deleted, cleanly, professionally. Gasps rippled through the hall. To delete those files, you need authorization. You need passwords. You need access granted to very few people. Kwame's eyes hardened. So let's stop pretending this was a misunderstanding. He turned slightly, addressing the room with sharper clarity. Wendy Mina was framed. The words hit like thunder. Some people exhaled loudly. Others shifted uncomfortably, guilt scratching at their faces. A few who had laughed the loudest now stared at the floor as if hoping it would swallow them. Kwame lifted his hand again. Wendy, seated near the side of the hall with Mama Nana's support, froze. Her heart hammered. She had insisted she didn't want to come, but Mama Nana had held her hand and said, "You deserve to see the truth stand up for you." Now every eye turned toward her. Wendy stood slowly. Her knees shook, but she forced herself upright, her hands clenched at her sides. She felt exposed, like the entire room could see the nights she cried silently, the fear she swallowed, the shame she refused to wear. Kwame looked at her, voice softening briefly. "I'm sorry," he said, not as a CEO, but as a man who had doubted her. "You should never have had to carry this alone." Wendy blinked, tears burning her eyes. She swallowed them back. Then Mama Nana stepped forward. Her voice was calm, but it carried weight like an iron bell. "I came into this company as a cleaner," she said. "Not because I needed work, not because I was desperate, but because I needed truth." The room was so silent you could hear a pin drop. "I wanted to know," Mama Nana continued, "who among you had a good heart, who treated others with dignity when there was nothing to gain." Her gaze moved across the crowd. People shifted uncomfortably under it. "For weeks you laughed at me," she said. "You called me village. You mocked my clothes. Some of you pushed me to the ground. Some of you watched and did nothing." The memory hung in the air, shameful and undeniable. But one person, Mama Nana said, her eyes finding Wendy, did not treat me like dirt. Wendy's throat tightened. "She called me Mama," Mama Nana continued. "Not because she wanted anything from me. Not because she knew who I was, but because she saw a human being." Mama Nana turned toward Kwame. "And that is the kind of woman I want near my son. The kind of woman who does not bow to wealth, but bows to what is right." A shockwave of whispers moved through the room. Anita's face stiffened. Kwame raised the remote and clicked again. The screen changed to audio files. "This," Kwame said, "is the full recording, not the edited version." The room tensed. The audio played Anita's voice at the hotel, smooth and threatening. The offer, the instructions, the money. Wendy's refusal, clear, firm, undeniable. Wendy's voice rang through the speakers, "I'm choosing my dignity." A gasp rose, this time not of delight, but of disbelief. The truth sounded different when it wasn't twisted. Kwame clicked again. Emails appeared, internal messages recovered from backups. An access log showing who entered the CCTV system. Timestamps, user IDs. Then the final click. A bank transfer chain tracing the planted deposits. The hall erupted into murmurs. People turned to look at one another, shocked, unsettled. Kwame's voice cut through. "Anita." The sound of her name felt like a blade drawn from a sheath. Anita's body stiffened. "Stand!" Kwame commanded. For a second she didn't move. Her fingers gripped the edge of her chair as if it could hold her down. Then she stood slowly, forcing a smile that trembled at the corners. "Sir," she said lightly, This is ridiculous." "Someone is trying to stop," Kwame said flatly. The smile fell. Kwame's gaze locked on her. "You offered Wendy money to quit. When she refused, you threatened her. You arranged an edited audio to humiliate her. You planted money into her account, and you erased CCTV footage to remove evidence." Anita's lips parted, but no words came. Kwame leaned forward slightly. "Did you think this company belonged to your ambition?" Anita's eyes flickered toward Mama Nana. Fear flashed there, pure and raw. Mama Nana's voice was calm. "You mistook silence for weakness," she said. "You thought because I held a mop, I held no power." Anita's breath shook. I didn't know." Mama Nana stepped closer. "You didn't need to know. You only needed to be human." The words landed harder than any shout. Kwame nodded to security. 2 guards approached. "Anita, you are terminated effective immediately," Kwame said. "Legal will proceed with charges for fraud, defamation, and interference with company systems." Anita's legs buckled slightly. "Please," she whispered, voice cracking. "Please, sir." No one moved to help her. The same room that once laughed at a woman on the floor now watched another woman fall under truth's weight. Linda looked down, shaking. Anita was escorted out. Kwame turned back to the room. "Let this be clear," he said. "This company will not be a playground for cruelty. If you mock the vulnerable, if you abuse your influence, if you destroy someone's name, then you do not belong here." His voice hardened. "And to those who stood by laughing, you will face disciplinary action as well." A wave of fear and shame passed through the crowd. Then Kwame turned toward Wendy. "Wendy," he said gently, "your record will be fully cleared. Your job is secure. Your name will be restored." Wendy's chest rose and fell, her lips trembling. "Thank you," she whispered, voice barely audible. Mama Nana stepped beside her and took her hand. "And Wendy," Mama Nana added, "I owe you an apology too. I tested you without your consent. I put you under pressure you did not deserve." Wendy blinked, stunned. "Mama," Mama Nana's eyes softened. "But you still chose kindness. You still chose truth. And because of that," she turned to the room again, "this is the woman I trust." A hush fell over the hall. Kwame looked at Wendy, something deep and serious in his eyes. Not a playful attraction, not a sudden obsession, a respect that had been earned the hard way. "I will not ask you for anything today," Kwame said quietly. "Not after what you've endured. But I want you to know this: I see you. And I will spend my time proving that I can be worthy of the trust you showed my mother." Wendy's tears finally spilled. Not from shame this time, from release, from the strange, overwhelming feeling of justice arriving at last. As the meeting ended, people filed out slowly, heads lowered, their world shifted. The office would never feel the same again. And for Wendy, the life she thought had been destroyed was being rebuilt right there in the very place it had been shattered. Not by money, not by status, but by a truth that refused to stay buried. Sometimes life doesn't test us when we are strong. It tests us when we are tired, broke, humiliated, and outnumbered. Wendy didn't win because she was powerful. She won because she refused to become cruel just to survive. In a world where people often treat others based on titles, her greatest strength was simple. She treated a cleaner like a mother, a human being, a soul. And that is the lesson many people learn too late. How you treat those who can do nothing for you reveals the real you. Money can buy attention. It can buy silence. It can even buy a fake smile. But it cannot buy integrity. It cannot buy a clean conscience. And it cannot buy the kind of love that stays when the lights go out and the benefits disappear. If you've ever been judged wrongly, mocked for being kind, or punished for doing the right thing, let Wendy's story remind you truth may walk slowly, but it arrives. And when it does, it doesn't just clear your name, it changes your future. Now tell me in the comments, what would you have done if you were Wendy? Take the money or walk away. Also, drop your country and local time so we can greet you properly. And if this story touched your heart, subscribe, like, and share, because someone out there needs this message today.